Morning. The Tuesday, January 21st Performance Committee will now come to order. We are convened as of 8:31 a.m. I would respectfully ask everyone attending this meeting to mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. Please note that the committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors will be held remotely via Zoom and will be audio and video recorded. The meeting recordings, along with the unofficial minutes of the meetings, will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website during today's meeting. During today's meeting, we are providing the Communication Access Real-Time Translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should send an email to the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated into Spanish for anyone who would like access to a live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. A live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. I would like to now call the roll for the committee members. Director Busick.
Here.
Director Geisinger.
Here.
Director Gutschenritter.
Here.
Vice Chair Gutschenritter, I'm sorry.
Also here.
Matt Larson, Director Matt Larson.
Here.
Forgive me, this is my first time calling roll, y'all. Director Chris Nicholson.
Here.
Director Peggy Catlin.
Here.
And I am the chair, Michael Guzman. I am here. For the record, and I might need some help, I see we also have Director Pagliari. We have Director Rusha. And I believe that and we have Chair Bouquet as well, and Director Banker. Did I miss anybody? All right, thank you. Please help me keep an eye out if somebody shows up and I don't recognize them. I would appreciate the assist. The next item on the agenda is the public comment. I would like to open public comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtddenver.com. Mr. Kroll, are there any hands raised?
Yes, Committee Chair Guzman, we have a number of hands raised. At this time, I'm seeing about a half a dozen hands, and the first individual is Bradley Miller.
Okay, thank you. And I feel it's incumbent to say this. We have folks that have meetings immediately after this committee that need to be on time. I am going to request that you make your comments. We want to hear them, but be brief and direct. We need to get to our work done. If the comments run too long, we may need to suspend public comment temporarily while we focus on our work. That will be an absolute last resort. I believe in public comment, but we are on a time-limited basis here. That said, what was the name that you gave me? I apologize.
It's okay. It is Bradley Miller.
I will recognize Bradley Miller. You will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to speak. Please state your name at the beginning of your statement so we have it on the record. You are now recognized.
Hi there. Yeah, this is Bradley Miller. I am a resident of District L in the RTD lineup. I'm reaching out because I recently it came to my attention that the current lineup of goals that have been established by the CEO and handed over to the board laid out a set of objectives that are frankly very concerning. RTD's ridership has not met post-COVID goals and has not met with peer cities in meaningful ways. And I am seriously concerned about this. I'm going to bring up a few numbers that were brought to my attention by my fellow GDT constituents. We are actually behind almost every single peer city in terms of dollars spent in relation to like our ridership numbers. We are spending roughly $360 per operation and about $17 per rider. And yet our ridership numbers are around 62%, where peer cities spending the same amount of money or even less,
Mr.
like
Miller, you are at
Seattle.
a minute 30.
Oh, thank you so much.
What is the next name in the queue?
Next, we have Ryan Keeney.
Mr. Ryan Keeney, you are recognized.
Hi. Can you answer this? I am, well, okay. I can't figure out how to turn the camera on, but I am currently on an RTD light rail train right now, crawling from Colorado Station to Yale. I boarded at Broadway about 50 minutes ago, almost a full hour ago now. With this frequency increase, the operator has said that there was a gigantic traffic jam caused by the slow zone. And I think the ongoing issues with Southeast Corridor are just thoroughly unacceptable. And any performance evaluation of the GM and CEO must account for reliability and ridership, because it's just an like as a taxpayer and an advocate of RTD. I mean, I want to encourage people to ride it, but I can't in good faith do it. I mean, I can barely ride it myself. So yeah, I took the opportunity to make a public comment since I have nothing better to do on this very slow train, which has been stop and go. Like, I've lost count of the number of times this train stopped mid-track or at stations for extended periods. So yeah, thank you for all the good work you do, directors, and yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Cole.
Yes, next we have someone who has phoned in and their phone number ends in 5107.
Please remember to state your name at the beginning of your comments. The phone number ending in 5107, you are recognized.
Thank you. My name is Michael Farrington. I'm also calling in about the upsetting goal session. I have lived in RTD districts my entire life. Our transit on-time percentage and reliability has gone down in that time, especially over the last 2 years. Setting an on-time percentage that is as vague and as unsubstantive as it currently is in the goals is just not good enough. We're lagging behind our peer cities, and frankly, as constituents, we deserve better. I would encourage this body to reconsider the goals and set goals that aspire to be a world-class transit agency like the GM always says that she seeks, rather than setting for something that is adequate at most. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. The next one.
Yes, next we have Joe Meyer.
Joe Meyer, you are recognized. Please remember to state your name at the beginning of your comments.
Thank you. My name is Joe Meyer. I'm a District L resident and involved with the Citizens Advisory Committee and Greater Denver Transit. I'm happy to see that the 3 proposed goals show that this committee is prioritizing issues that affect riders, but I would like to urge the committee to think more ambitiously, set more aggressive targets, and show riders, employees, and taxpayers that you are serious about meaningfully pursuing continued improvements in RTD's performance. Increasing light rail service availability to 96% by the end of September is achievable and represents an improvement over today, but I would like to see this coupled with a commitment not to cut service frequency or service hours to achieve this. On-time performance must be improved far beyond the proposed 1.5%. Commuter rail already has great on-time performance and should not be combined with light rail for this metric, as it would mask the real improvements needed to light rail. Bus and light rail are showing on-time performance of around 80% or less throughout 2024. Light rail on-time performance dropped by 30 percentage points from March to October. A 1.5% improvement is laughably unambitious compared to that and doesn't get anywhere close to turning that around. Yes, I recognize meaningful improvements here are going to require resources and effort, but that's the point of these goals, to help shape how the agency allocates resources and effort. I'd propose that all modes be improved to 85% or better on-time performance, with continued increases on top of this in subsequent years. Although bus performance is subject to many factors outside of RTD's control, targeted upgrades to bus infrastructure in coordination with local governments can achieve this metric.
You
Some of
are
the
at a
route
minute 30.
splits. No. Thank you.
Is your comment wrappable?
Yes, I'd like to add just one more piece. That for ridership, 3% is too low. We're talking much bigger operating budget increases than that, and service hour increases by 3% from 2024 to 2025. So we need to provide better service, up to 70 million boardings in 2025, and I look forward to more ambitious targets. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, next we have Keith Brooks.
Hello. I just wanted to state that looking through the goals, the three main categories set out that the GM CEO are evaluated on are pretty good. Though I do have problems, like many have stated here, with the exact details of the short-term goals. The three categories are about what you'd expect. However, my main concern is how points are apportioned between these categories. Specifically, that short-term goals represent only 30 points this year, which is even fewer than last year. And I don't think it's particularly fair to Deborah Johnson if what she will hear about at every board meeting, what the directors will hear about, is things like ridership and revenue and safety. But meanwhile, her actual goals, those will only be 30%, which kind of puts her in an awkward position. So I would like to see the portion of the goals that we will be hearing and experiencing the most over the next year to comprise a larger fraction of the goals, ideally somewhere in the 40 to 48% range. That's my piece.
Thank you. Mr. Kroll?
Next we have Cody.
Sorry, before we do that, I did see Director Chandler joined us as well.
Right. Next we have Cody Bryan.
Cody Bryan, you are recognized. Please state your name and begin.
Yes, my name is Cody Bryan. I am a member of GDT and also a resident of District C. I believe the board has planted their flag in the correct place for the first two goals, albeit a little too low on the hill for anyone to see. But the third goal, based around the survey data, provides no meaningful way to judge the actual rider experience on board RTD's rail and bus services. I believe a more meaningful target for this board would be to increasing fare box recovery. In order to achieve this goal, having a more direct presence on board trains and buses for the purposes of checking whether riders have purchased a ticket or not. Evidence from other agencies has shown that by increasing fare enforcement leads to a decline in the types of illicit or uncomfortable activity that can deter people from riding RTD in the first place. This enforcement would not only have to be carried out by transit officers, as other agencies have piloted the use of fare ambassadors to achieve these goals. An added benefit of targeting fare box recovery is the potential added revenue to RTD's budget, demonstrating sound financial stewardship. I would urge the board to reconsider their third goal for performance standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kroll?
Yes, next we have Richard Bamber.
Richard Bamber, you are recognized. Please remember to state your name. Mr. Bamber?
Perhaps we can move to the next individual, Director Guzman, and then we can circle back to Mr. Bamber. Mr. Bamber, we're having audio issues. We can't hear you. So next, on the list here, we have Alexander Horter.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. My name is Alexander Herter, like I just said, and I was phoning in this morning just to speak a little bit about what I thought about the goals. As some of the previous public commenters have said, the ridership improvement goal is frankly not sufficient given the scale of RTD and what we're trying to achieve here. More specifically, in my previous discussions and advocacy with RTD, I've heard that driver retention is a big factor, and nowhere in here am I seeing actionable, besides the goals, ways that this could be improved. So for the particular case of driver retention, if you're trying to retain drivers, higher pay and so forth is helpful. But to speak more directly to the goals, we need to increase operator availability, specifically increase frequency on certain routes. I would like to specifically call out the AB route from Boulder to Airport, both AB1 and AB2. And the most recent January service changes, it has been increased, but frankly, it is still not enough. In some areas, people are frankly hurting for buses. In other areas, not so much. And so I think it's also important to take a look at the allocation of resources and make sure we're putting resources where they need to be. Specifically, as it comes to fare enforcement, I would also like to echo what another member said. Fare enforcement is very critical, especially on the light rail and commuter rail lines, to ensure a safe environment as well as it makes people follow the rules, frankly. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kroll? Shall we recognize Mr. Bamber one more time, see if we can hear him?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, please proceed.
Perfect. Good morning, Chair Guzman. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The goals are definitely an improvement on last year. You know, we're starting to see focusing on the real things that the voters and the customers care about: ridership, safety, reliability. That said, the weighting, we would like the weighting of the goals to be up in the 40s. You know, the rest of it feels like running the transit agency on vibes. Okay, we need hard goals and harder things to be achieved. The goals need to be written with hard numbers. Ridership is a hard number, 60 something million. Therefore, the goal needs to be a hard number. So, you know, 70 million. Relative percentages can be to explain it, but they shouldn't be the goal. Now, with the goals and setting these things, the goals need to be sufficiently challenging that the response we want to incentivize our GM and CEO to do is that she's got to walk away going, I need to do decisive action here. I need to bring in new policies, procedures. I can't just sit back and have a good year and achieve it. That said, the balance is the goals are also SMART goals, and the A in SMART is achievable and attainable. Okay. So the other thing I need people to understand is that for the first year, if the GM and CEO rolls out a whole load of new policies to increase ridership, it's unlikely that the full effects of those policies will be felt in year one. Therefore, we're keeping them quite sort of almost on a level of unambitious, but that's good. But the expectation will be years 2, 3, and 4, when these policies really kick in, that ridership target will go up in a non-linear fashion. The thing is, goal 3, it needs to be
We are at a minute 30. I'm sorry.
Needs to be replaced. Police and security need to board 70 trains a day, and we need fare revenue to go to 70 million. And we'll support a 4th organizational resilience goal that we've heard about, should that be introduced. Thank you.
Thank you. The name of the next speaker, please, Mr. Kroll.
Yes, the next speaker is simply listed as Matt.
Matt,
hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, you are recognized. Please state your name for the record.
Matt Mayernick.
Thank you.
And just wanted to briefly speak on my experience, why using the light rail is just not a viable option for my wife and I. We were using it consistently. About a year ago, E&H line, we lived right by one of the stations, but she stopped using it because of safety concerns. So we need to increase fare enforcement because there's people literally smoking drugs on the train. And as for me, I can't take it to work anymore because it's super unreliable. I never know when there's going to be a cancellation. And when it does show up, there's spots where the train moves 5 miles per hour or less. So I would love to be a daily rider. We both would. We'll pay our fare. We'd love to support the program, but unfortunately, it's just not a viable option. Right now, we're both driving to work, and we just don't want to do that. So if we can really reach these goals of fair enforcement and more consistency, you have two solid riders and two solid supporters at my house. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kroll, is there somebody else?
At this time, Committee Chair Guzman, I see no further hands raised.
Were there any matters emailed to this committee for the record?
Yes, you all received 2 emails in advance of today's meeting, and a third came in during the course of the meeting. The first email came from an Evan Odelberg, and it was in relation to today's agenda action item, the short-term goals for the GM and CEO. The second email was from an Edwin Clark Silva, also related to the short-term goals item listed on your agenda. And the third item is a follow-up from Mr. Meyer, who spoke earlier on the topic of the short-term goals.
Thank you. I do also want to state that in our work, there have been several versions of goals that have been shared with folks, and there may be more today. I think it would be wise to try and compile those so that the full board has access to them, as this is a full board matter. We also want our CEO and General Manager Deborah Johnson to be able to review those and opine. And so if anything is new today, that is acceptable, but we want to make sure that we have that writing and language in front of all parties so that it's fair. Thank you to the public for giving us your comments. I will now close the public comment section and we will move on to the recommended action. Before we begin this, I do have a couple of comments I would like to make, and then I will accept a motion. I'll turn it over to Deborah to present, and then we can discuss. Please refrain from personalities in our meetings. It is part of our board operating guidelines. You will be interrupted, and I will call on the next speaker, and you will no longer be recognized. We will proceed with respect, as it is one of our agency values, but we do our work through the values of diversity, trustworthiness, collaboration, ownership, and passion. Those are clearly defined in our strategic plan, and we need to follow them because leadership starts at the top. If we are out of order in any of those, it would be responsible to either stop or I will recognize the next speaker and we will continue on. I would like to keep it to the matter before us only. Keep the comments and questions germane to the subject we are discussing. It is our custom as a board, and this is a learning moment, for us to remember that 1 or 2 direct questions about the matter before us and perhaps a concise and clear statement on the matter is best practice so that everybody has an opportunity to speak. Do not speak unless you're recognized. If you do not hear your name called or I do not catch a hand, it may be appropriate to unmute to get my attention. That is perfectly fine, but please allow me the opportunity to recognize you first so you can continue. We are on cart, so speak clearly and at a pace respectful of the transcriptionist. I'll remind speakers if we see the transcripts getting a little jumbled because they cannot interrupt our proceedings, and we want to work together as good partners. That said, I am going to request that General Manager CEO Johnson please proceed with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Greetings, Deborah Johnson, General Manager and CEO. May I ask Jack Kroll to share his screen and bring up the presentation?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. While I do that, Director Guzman, would you like to ask for a motion to
Yes.
put this item on the table?
So as this is coming to us for recommended action, which is only recommended, and we have the opportunity to speak here, I would like to seek a motion.
Busick.
I hear Director
Yes.
Busick as the movement. And the
Yes,
second,
right, in a second.
Yes, sir.
Chair, if I may, my motion would be for the Board of Directors to approve pursuant to the GM CEO's performance framework adopted in January 2024 in alignment with the board's employment agreement with the GM CEO, the proposed short-term SMART goals for the performance period commencing January 28, 2025 and continuing through October 15, 2025. That would be my motion.
Is there a proper second to that motion?
I'll second. Gutschenritter.
All right, I have the movement as stated, Busick, and a second from Vice Chair Gutschenritter. Deborah, if you are ready, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kroll, if you could advance to the next slide, please. Thank you very kindly. What I intend to do in a succinct and concise fashion this morning is present to all of you for your edification the General Manager CEO Performance Assessment Framework, of which Director Busick just referenced in the recommended action. Talk about the annual performance assessment components that are comprised of the base job performance that basically was extrapolated from the job description that was created by a third party when the board of directors was recruiting to fill the position of general manager CEO in the summer of 2020. Going forward, talk about the short-term goals and have a discussion relative to proposed. Operative word is proposed 2025 goals, of which both parties are to align around. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So looking at the graphic depiction before you, we can clearly see to the left of the screen, there's the general manager CEO accountability, and to the right, the board of director accountability. Recognizing the assessment framework that was adopted by this body in January of 2024, agency values comprise a portion of the framework, recognizing it's critically important that the general manager and CEO demonstrates the ideals and beliefs that the agency holds to be true through the adoption of the 6 values, i.e. simply put, how does the general manager and CEO show up while performing one's duties? To the right of that box is the core base job duties. It's the strategy, execution, and leadership, i.e. the base job duties are critically important relative to the job in which I, holding the position of the general manager and CEO, was hired. And that is something clearly that's done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days of the year, recognizing that service delivery basically is provided through this organization every day of the year. Recognizing the importance of assessing what needs to be done through short-term goals that we have qualified as being SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. It's outlining what will be done in the performance period, which, for a point of clarification, actually isn't a 12-month period, recognizing that we're having a conversation today on January 21st, and that due to the fiscal year of which correlates with the calendar year, it's actually closer to 9.5 months about what will be done. In the gray box, it's grayed intentionally, but optimally as we go forward, there should be long-term goals in support of the agency's core business, which is outlined in the RTD Act, which is delivering transit services to this region, being the Denver metro region. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as we look at this coming full circle relative to the agency values and the core base job duties, each accounts for a designated percentage of the annual performance, and then the short-term goals relative to what it is that is collectively decided by this body with input from me as the general manager and CEO outlines a percentage of the annual performance. So, i.e. agency values, which are critical in demonstrating how I show up in doing my base job duties as well as the short-term goals. Next slide, please. So as a refresher, in 2024, the assessment scale basically mirrored 3 areas of ratings, with the primary one being meets expectations, because it is expected that I meet the expectations. If I'm not meeting expectations, I would encourage this body to get somebody in the job that can. Recognizing that does not meet expectations would be less than 50 points accrued, and anything exceeding expectations was in the 80 to 100 point range. Recognizing in 2025, there needs to be a discussion relative to the assessment scale and point allocation, and then pursuant to the employment contract, the 8th Amendment that was approved on December 10th of 2024, the contract salary adjustment range goes from 1% to 7%. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This is clearly a snapshot of the job description in which I've referenced. I believe every board member is in possession of this, as General Counsel Snyder provided this in electronic form to you all last week. As I indicated during my opening remarks, this was derived from the 2020 Chief Executive Officer General Manager position description, which was developed with input from the board, with a third-party executive search firm, Croftheimer and Associates. Also, what's critically important when you're managing any individual, regardless of position, it's critically important for said manager to provide quarterly feedback at a minimum and dialogue during the performance period. This has been qualified into the 8th Amendment to my employment contract, as I had not received that previously, and then recognizing the evaluation or evaluative criteria assessed by the board would be done by the 4th quarter of each year, i.e., as I indicated, more likely in the November timeframe due to the fiscal year at this agency, which is in alignment with the calendar year. Next slide, please. So as a gentle reminder, these are the agency values, i.e. passion, respect, diversity, trustworthiness, collaboration, and ownership. These are critically important as we talk about my base job duties as well as any short-term goals. I need to possess these values and demonstrate those in the course of my work. And this is something, as you heard from Committee Chair Guzman, it's indicative of all of us in our roles at the agency to model the behaviors we like to see. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this is a clear depiction of how our strategic plan falls in line with the short-term goals that I will discuss momentarily. As you can see, in the middle of this pyramid, the strategic priorities, it's basically outlining what it is that we will concentrate on for the life of the current performance plan, i.e., as we talk about strategic priorities, it's our customer excellence, community values, employee ownership, and financial success. But delving more specifically into the strategic initiatives, it's what we're tackling this year, focusing on back to basics, people power, welcoming transit environment, and customer and community connections are critically important. And as you can see below that are the tactics. It's how will we get work done? And so basically every individual employee in this organization that's non-represented, as well as those on the front lines, are making contributions. But from a performance vantage point, there's tactical type initiatives that feed into our strategic initiatives that fall into the priorities, going back up to the values, our mission, and then our vision, what we are utilizing as our North Star, which is us being the trusted leader in mobility, delivering excellence and value to our community and our customers. Going forward to the next slide, please. So as a gentle reminder, once again, these short-term goals are in support of the strategic plan, which was adopted by the Board of Directors in August of 2021. And the goals that are being proposed are clearly in alignment with the strategic initiatives of this year that are focusing on customer and community connections, as well as welcoming transit environment. Next slide, please. So in relationship to the first goal, which is in alignment with customer and community connections, the goal as written states that no later than September 30th, 2025 to increase light rail service availability to 96%, which is 50% of the goal, and to increase annualized on-time performance by 1.5% for both fixed route bus and rail. When we talk about fixed route, we are merely talking about our bus service. And in relationship to this, I want to just provide some context that historically RTD's bus and commuter rail service availability metrics have remained above 99%, meaning that for every 100 trips scheduled, more than 99 trips are operated. Light rail service availability has been impacted in recent years due to several factors. You heard from several commenters earlier in the meeting. The factors including but not limited to are operator availability and state of good repair and preventative maintenance activities. So overall light rail service availability for 2024 was 94.34%, meaning that of the 223,205 trips scheduled, 208,412 were actually operated. On-time performance is influenced by numerous factors, including elements both within the agency's control, which could, revolve around operator availability, scheduling, and maintenance. And then outside of the agency's control would be regional traffic patterns, road congestion, service impacts, construction, detours, weather. Increasing on-time performance by even small increments requires budgetary support as well as considerable concerted effort of bus and rail operations teams, as well as service planning and human resources. And so for the first 11 months of 2024, average on-time performance for fixed route service by mode is as follows, which is included in your packet. Bus was 80.4%, light rail 77%, and commuter rail is 95.2%. I'd like to share, while I've heard comments about the number of 1.5%, it's critically important for those that aren't familiar with how one develops a service plan, that there's critical factors in recognizing where we are with our budget and elements within and the time period. I would just ensure that there is a laser-like focus on what actually can be done. I want you to know that I am, committed to ensuring that we can deliver to the best of our abilities. I do not shy away from challenges, but I do believe expectations need to be managed around what can be done. When one develops a schedule, first you look at the schedule in and of itself, then you discern how many vehicles that you need. From the vehicles, you determine how much people power you need. From there, you determine how many supervisors you need, because it's about managing the network. It's critically important that one pulls out on time. It's critically important that you meet your time spots. And then as you go from there, that's how you generate on-time performance. So there's certain mechanisms that need to be in place as we move forward. If you can advance the slide, Mr. Kroll, to slide 2, I would appreciate it. So the short-term goal 2 is to increase year-over-year fixed route vehicle boardings by 3% from the period commencing October 1st, 2024 and ending September 30th, 2025, while optimizing the increase in RTD's 2025 annualized revenue service hours to 3,191,109. Now, this goal aligns with the agency's efforts to improve performance metrics tied to community perceptions, attitudes, and opinions of the value that RTD provides to the Denver metro region and of RTD's provisions of service to major activity centers, as well as the state's visionary ridership goal of 6%. RTD continues to optimize service levels and is incrementally approaching the level of service delivery contemplated in the comprehensive operations analysis branded by this agency as its own system optimization plan, which was adopted by the board in July of 2022. Funding in calendar year 2025, which is also this agency's fiscal year, for the increase in revenue service hours of approximately 102,000 was included in the 2025 budget, which was approved by the board December 3rd. Annual boardings for the period commencing October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024 totaled 65,767,000. A 3% year-over-year increase is contemplated, and this goal will equate to nearly 2 million additional boardings, which is the equivalent of 5,400 additional boardings daily. Moving forward to the next slide, Mr. Kroll. So as we look at the next goal, which is in alignment with a welcoming transit environment, this goal is to increase customer survey responses by 4% from calendar year 2024 to calendar year 2025 in relation to questions pertaining to customers' perception of feeling safe and secure while waiting at stops or stations and feeling safe and secure aboard vehicles. Now, this goal intentionally is to improve performance metrics related to customers' perceptions of personal safety and security. So as you all are aware, customer excellence surveys were conducted in 2024, and they indicated that 55% of bus and rail customers felt personally safe and secure while waiting for fixed route transit vehicles, and 62% of bus and rail customers felt personally safe and secure while aboard RTD vehicles. While these responses are significantly higher than national averages for transit agencies, staff anticipates that an increase in customer perceptions of safety and security will yield corresponding increases in boardings as well as customer satisfaction with RTD services. Simply put, individuals have a tendency to feel safer in numbers, and hence we're better together. And so recognizing that, we can advance to the next slide, please. Next slide. So as it relates to the 2025 performance framework, putting forward the retention of the 2024 structure. As you can see before you, I've already outlined the components which comprises the framework in and of itself. The agency values plus the core base job functions accounts for 64% of the annual performance, and then the short-term goals at 36. And then we have the salary adjustment relative to the expectation category for the ratings, starting with the primary one being meets expectations in the center of the box to the right, being 50 to 79, then going to does not meet 0 to 49, and then exceeds to 80 to 100. And then the point allocation you can see to the right, which is also captured in the board report that's attached in your packets. Next slide, please. So as it relates to the annual performance assessment components, as it relates to going forward, the agency values 10%, the core base job functions 50, which equates to 60, and the short-term goals of 30%. These are round numbers after having conversations with board members independently, recognizing some angst, I would say, with the numbers that were utilized last year. But as we all know, this is a discussion to be had. Moving forward to the next slide, please. So as it relates to the adjustment alignment relative to meeting expectations, looking at the middle of the screen with the rating category, 55 to 80 points for the range, adjusted base salary to 3 to 5.99%. Then basically jumping to the does not meet expectations, 0 to 54%, with 1% to 2.99%, and then exceeds 81 to 100 points to 6 adjusted base salary, 6 to 7%. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chair. I will yield the floor to you.
Thank you. In addition to this, we do have to discuss one matter that I would like to address, and that is the Likert scale on which we do our review to make a simple change. So I am presenting this to you, but we do need to make a decision about this. Last year, I think there was an unforeseen circumstance in the way that it was done. I would propose that we also send a recommendation to the executive committee along with this, that we change the Likert scale to begin at 0 and end at 4. That is a 5-point spread for every question we will be answering on our review at the end of the year in order to get a true calculation of responses from the board. That is the only thing that I am suggesting as part of this going forward to the board. It is not in the slides here, but it is a component that we need to decide now because it will take effect at the end of the month. And if we do not additionally speak to that, then we end up with potentially a problem that was unforeseen last year. So it's not of great effect or consequence. It's just something that we need to consider. Mr. Kroll, I'm gonna ask you to pull down your screen for just a moment. Thank you. And I am ready for the committee to have a conversation. First recognized is Vice Chair Guchenritter.
Thank you very much, Chair Guzman. And CEO Johnson, thank you very much for the energy, effort, and thought that went into defining all of that and walking us through it. I know that was a lot of work. As vice chair over the past week, I have individually spoke with a majority of the board, again, individually. And one of the strategic initiatives that kept coming up and that would really make people, I think, feel more confident about the short-term goals is people power. And tied to that specifically is something that's been discussed, I know, in 2024 and come up again in 2025, and that is around organizational resiliency. We'd like to see that added as a fourth goal. The reason adding it as a fourth goal and not substituting is that we're confident that it should be achievable. We believe that's best for the agency. We believe it's best for you in the sense that it would allow you to focus truly on the CEO GM hat and not have to wear multiple hats. The specific language, which it would love to hear your thoughts and have more dialogue around it, is to have 2 C-suite active or planned vacancies to be filled by end of April 2025. And to have a board-approved succession strategy by July 31st, 2025. I will pause and see if there's questions or thoughts.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you very much, Committee Chair Guchenritter, for that addition. I'm seeking a point of clarity as you qualified it as organizational resiliency. It sounds as if you're really speaking to leadership resiliency, considering that most successful organizations create resiliency through professional development of current and future leaders. I would qualify as well as we talk about April. Let's be clear that I am actively recruiting for several positions, and there is a myriad of factors that go into place when one is recruiting. Simply put, I could put anybody in the job, but I have to ensure that they meet the minimum qualifications, that they're competent, that we're adhering to Colorado state law in reference to ensuring that there's equal pay for equal work. So there's a myriad of different factors that have to be considered. If in fact a conditional offer is presented to an individual and they don't pass the background check, we could start anew. So I just want to manage those expectations going forward when we're sitting here at the end of January having those conversations, and we're talking about 2 positions critically that we are having discussions around. So could you provide some more specificity relative to how you derive the time-bound date of April relative to what you just posed? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So the thinking there with April is that these roles have been open for some time, and I know that we know that you have been working to actively fill those, and feel that having till the end of April should give you ample time to make those hires. But understood on what you discussed. If somebody were to reject an offer, there's negotiations that have to occur. But we think realistically, that's going to best set up the agency for success, making the right hires by at least end of April.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask one clarifying question.
Yes. proceed.
Committee Chair Gudrun-Ritter, you said make the hires. So as we talk about individuals that could be outside of the area, relocating and things of the like, you're talking about actually making an offer and having somebody accept with a hire date. And I'm just trying to manage expectations because there's a lot of nuances that I wasn't able to glean by the statements that were put forward.
Sure. Yeah. And happy to clarify. I think the point would be to have a higher, the higher date could be in the future of April, but having a contract signed, person identified to be in that role would be that's what we would be seeking by end of April.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Committee Chair Gudrun-Ritter. And just for everybody's edification, I just wanted to state that the only contract employee at this agency is the General Manager and CEO. So there would be no contract offered to any of the new hires, just for clarification. Thank you very much. I yield the floor.
Thank you. Anything further, Vice Chair Gudrun-Ritter? Okay, thank you. Director Larson, you are recognized.
Thank you. So I've sent each of you an alternative goal framework and set of goals that I think is better for driving focus on what we need to do for this agency. I'd like to see those goals mostly replace what we have on currently on the table. Right now, I'd just like to highlight my reasoning behind a few of them. First of all, I think the large majority of the goals should be based on objective metrics. Last year, they were 34%. In previous years, 50%. Now, I think I see they're going to represent or propose to represent 30%. I think that's going in the wrong direction. I mean, fortunately for this year, the board negotiated a contract that did not require a specific percentage of subjective goals. And I think we should take advantage of that and make sure that the objective measurements are by far the large majority of the goals, since I think those really best reflect how well the agency is doing to provide more value to current and potential riders. I mean, alignment with agency values and base job performance, while important, won't really mean a lot to our riders and taxpayers if we can't deliver a better service that attracts increased ridership through better reliability and better security. And frankly, I think the objective goals are better for the GM and CEO too, since they reward actual results that we can measure more so than anybody's subjective feelings about somebody. Next, I'd like to propose, or I think that the ridership goal should be at least 69.6 million boardings in 2025. I calculated that based on a 5% increase over the seasonally adjusted run rate of the last 3 months of ridership data that we have, meaning April, May, and October. Those were the months that were not affected by the coping panels project, so I thought they were as representative as we could get at this point. Some might say that 5% over that run rate is too modest of an increase, as it will put us only at 65.8% of our pre-COVID ridership goal, which is less than cities like San Diego, Salt Lake City, Houston, Austin, Sacramento, Dallas, and Seattle had achieved in 2023. But I think it's still a good start, and given the short amount of time we have had as a new board to evaluate the situation, I also think that we should set up the point allocation for this so that 5% represents an A+, but a smaller number, there are still a percentage of the points counted towards that goal. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if 5% is not achieved, there are no points rewarded. I also propose, and this is a comment you heard from many of the callers, that we have a goal on fare box recovery. Right now, we are at a very low percentage of revenue in terms of fare box collections, 4 or 5%. Fare box recovery, lower than most of our peer agencies. I'm proposing the goal be to increase it to 7% in 2025. I know it's dropped tremendously in recent years, and I know a large part of that is because of decreased ridership and lower fares. But I also think a large part of it is because we've failed to enforce fare collection in many cases, and that means many riders who should be paying are not, simply because they really have no reason to beyond the goodness of their heart. I think we need to reverse that trend for a number of reasons, and I think we can if we try. Some might say this new board has not really had the time to think through sort of the details of some of the goals that I'm proposing. And so we should just kind of, stick with what we have here and focus on 2026. And it is true, for reasons I don't really understand, that the time that's been kind of allocated for considering performance goals for this new board or partially new board has been really short. But I still think it's our duty as representatives of the riding and tax-paying public to really risk erring on the side of too high expectations for improvement than on the side of too low expectations. We all know about the increased transit ridership is crucial for the state to achieve its carbon emissions goals. I don't think we can wait until 2026 to start accelerating our progress out there. I think my proposed goals are achievable and would really do more to put RTD on the right track faster. So whatever happens today, I intend to make sure that the full board has the opportunity to vote on the goals that I've proposed in some version. And I hope we can be as ambitious as I've just described. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Larson. Director Busick, you were next in queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Snyder, are you there?
Ms. Snyder.
Yes, I am here, Director Busick.
I just want to confirm that under the Roberts rules, that any amendments to a motion that is on the table have to be done by a motion to amend that is seconded and then voted upon. Is that correct, even in committee?
Yes, that's correct, Director Busick. I would just recommend that there be some discussion, and then, yes, if there's going to be any motions to amend, those need to come with a second.
Great. Okay. I just want to make sure that the two directors that have already spoken understand that if they want to bring this forward for us as a committee to consider, you're going to have to state it as a motion to amend. You're going to have a second, and then we'll dispose of the motion to amend, and we'll dispose of them in however many orders. I know, Michael, you know that, but I'm just not sure. We just have all this discussion about people that want amendments, but no one's making any motion to do that. So maybe it's too soon for that. Thanks.
Director Nicholson, you are recognized.
Hi there, and I apologize for the sirens in the background. The downside of living downtown is that we have fire trucks on a pretty regular basis. So I have a couple of comments. I'll start with this. During this meeting, literally just in the last hour or so, I've received multiple emails and text messages about the substantial delays on the Southeast Corridor. There are people in my district who are going to be an hour late to work because of what's going on the Southeast Corridor, because we didn't effectively let them know at the stations and beforehand that we were going to be doing such disruptive maintenance. So that leads into my first comment, which is a 1.5% increase on on-time performance on bus and light rail just isn't good enough. We used to be at 95% just a couple of years ago for light rail, and now we're down below 70%. People use this to get to work. They use this to get to the things that they absolutely have to depend upon to get to. And when we're telling them 30% of the time, what you're riding on is going to be at least 5 minutes late, and in some cases much later, they're not going to use it. So I think that for me, I don't understand why we can't get back to 85% on bus ridership, which is where we were in 2022. And I don't understand why we can't get up to at least 75%. on light rail ridership, or not ridership, sorry, on time percentage, which is well below where we were in 2022. So that's the first question. The second point, I think that what's been said about ridership is absolutely right. I listened to the Smart Act hearings on Friday. I was not there, but I bothered to take the time. And our CFO, Doug McLeod, said during those hearings that the expectation for 2025 was 68 million boardings. The SMART goal that's proposed would get us to 67,740,000 boardings. So I would suggest that at a minimum, our SMART goal should be meaningfully ahead of what the agency is already projecting as our ridership for 2025. If we're saying publicly 68 million, the goal should be 70 million, though I'll admit I would take 69 million, which would be a 5% increase, a little over 69 million. 69,055,000 would be a 5% increase over the number cited in the packet for 2024. And I think that it would be I think it would be disturbing, quite honestly, to a lot of the public if we couldn't manage a 5% increase, considering how far below other peer agencies, as Director Larson pointed out, that we are right now. And then the third thing I'll say is I'm uncomfortable with any type of SMART goal that's measured by a survey rather than measured by data. There is good hard data that we have when it comes to fare enforcement, when it comes to security boardings on a train. The Greater Denver Transit folks pointed out that we keep track of what our security officers do. Being able to say we're checking in on 50% of trains, 70% of trains, whatever it is a useful hard metric that cannot be gamed by who we end up asking with this and what kind of responses we get. And so I think that we should have a conversation going forward about changing that goal. I'm not sure it's something we can do on the fly because it would mean completely rewriting that. As a small note, if we did get so I'm fine with leaving number 3 where it is. You can only argue about so many things. But I think that of those, it would be bordering on unconscionable if we didn't get ridership up at least 5%. And I'm comfortable right now making a motion to increase that to 5%. And I'll have a second.
May I have CEO Johnson raised her hand? So there's some dialogue that needs to happen there, and the two of you are free to do so. You're both recognized to handle that.
Thank you very much, Committee Chair Guzman, and thank you, Secretary Nicholson, for your comments. Just a point of clarification, you indicated that OTP for light rail was 70%, it's 77%. You indicated that 30% weren't getting to where they needed to go. That's actually 23%. I'm not making excuses, but I think it's important that we actually use correct data as we make comments. And then moving forward, I know that Director Larson mentioned this, and then you in turn as well, basically have qualified peer agencies, and I don't necessarily understand the aspect of peer. You mentioned San Diego MTS, there's Sacramento Regional Transit. When we talk about peer agencies, recognizing they don't have to run sweeper trains to keep their catenary wires warm so you can deliver service. Those agencies are in Southern California and Northern California, respectively. So when we talk about peer agencies, we go forward, we need to qualify what we're indicating as a peer relative to fleet size, operating environment, the various modalities. I think that's critically important because peer has a multitude of definitions, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be aligned around what that is. So thank you very kindly, Mr. Chair, for allowing me just to put forward my thoughts relative to statements that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I dialogue back?
Yes, briefly.
Thank you. Yes, you're right. I apologize. I was speaking off the cuff. We are at 77%. We were at 90-something% before the issues that we've had. I think we should have a conversation about what those on-time performances should be. I think we should state each one explicitly in the goals rather than a percentage increase. And we can have that conversation, but I would suggest that we need to have I think this needs to come out of here with a ridership increase. And I'm happy to have that specific conversation now. So I'd like to make a motion to amend the SMART goals to increase the percentage to 5%, the second SMART goal to increase the percentage to 5% for the fixed route vehicle boardings instead of 3%. We can then obviously have a discussion specifically about that.
Director Nicholson, I apologize, but not all of the committee members have spoken on the primary subject. Do you mind waiting just a moment to put that motion forward so that Director Geisinger may speak? Because I don't know what she would like to say about these goals and the matter before us, as I requested at the beginning of the meeting.
Yes, I will happily defer to Director Geisinger.
Thank you. Director Geisinger, you're recognized.
Thank you. I see Ms. Johnson has raised her hand.
Yes, please, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you very kindly. And I just wanted to point out another critical element to manage everybody's expectations. Recognizing that one of our strategic initiatives is State of Good Repair, or I should say back to basics, that focuses on state of good repair. Secretary Nicholson made reference to on-time performance with light rail and what it used to be, recognizing that this organization had $290 million in backlog as it relates to state of good repair, because whether good, bad, or indifferent, there was a laser-like focus on building out the network and ensuring that we had new rail lines that were operable. Recognizing where we are, it's critically important that we focus on having our assets in a state of good repair so they will be available for decades to come. With that as a backdrop, that is significantly important when we qualify comparisons and talk about what OTP used to be, because OTP will be for naught if in fact we don't have rail network that are in a state of good repair, because it would prohibit us from operating trains. So I think that's important, and it's nuanced, but it's more than relevant to the discussion at hand. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to inject that.
Thank you.
Can I just dialogue back very quickly?
No, Director Geisinger is recognized currently.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my questions goes to your point just a minute ago, Ms. Johnson, which is, the light rail numbers for on-time performance have dropped to 77%, largely because of the maintenance we're doing. So when you're saying you're going to increase it by 1.5%, how does that fit with the maintenance? Do you expect to be continuing the same level of maintenance? I mean, we could hit that number by dropping the maintenance amount, right?
Mr. Chair?
Madam CEO.
Yes, thank you very much, Director Geisinger. You hit the nail on the head, because recognizing where we are collectively, we still are doing track inspections. We are getting to a place where we should have been, whether good, bad, or indifferent, as I said before. And that is, I'm not placing fault or blame because I own this coming in, but recognizing I didn't know what I didn't know relative to where we are as an organization. For instance, our coping panel project, that was something that should have occurred back in 2018, did not get underway until, as you all know, until 2023 into 2024. We still have other elements as it relates to phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4 in our original downtown segment of our light rail corridor that we anticipate to be working on, i.e. either the summer or the fall. We will be apprising you accordingly, recognizing that we have an active solicitation out on the street. So we're not going to basically abandon our responsibility to keep our assets in a state of good repair. And as we go through looking at visual inspections, using other mechanisms to ensure that the rail is in an operable state, there are going to be some impacts, because that's par for the course with the transportation network. And that's taken into consideration as we put forward service plans and things of the like that can account for regular PMs as we go forward. So thank you very much for the question.
Yeah, it's a little hard to judge the 1.5% when we have so much maintenance going on that's affecting what the on-time performance is right now, because obviously it could vary a little next year. Why has bus on-time performance been dropping? And I know you explained several reasons that it has gone down. I mean, will those change? Will we be able to raise that? I know we haven't split it out, but can we get that back up to 1.5% on bus as well? Do you see that happening?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And thank you, Director Geisinger, for the question. So recognizing that our bus network does not have dedicated right-of-way, we are traversing arterials just as single occupant vehicles do. And in the primary area of our service, being the central business district here within the city and county of Denver, there's been a myriad of different construction activities. For those of you that may be familiar, there have been various treatments that have been done in reference to sharrows, bollards, and things of the like to provide protection for bicyclists. We have been working with the city and county of Denver as well, recognizing that when we turn, our turning radius had to be adjusted, and there were some elements that included detours as well with all the construction happening around the metro area. That basically plays into our on-time performance and our ability to be able to meet time points as illustrated in our schedule. With that going forward, we have been communicating with Dottie, and I call them out specifically, and that's not to alienate any other part of the district. But when you think about the vast majority of the bus routes, they are within Denver, and the others are more or less freeway running as we try to get to critical areas outside of Denver. Those factor in. We cannot project the unforeseen detours or accidents or things of the like, but this is predicated upon what we know to be relative to the engagement we've had with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure and any type of construction that may be ongoing as we move forward. And one critical piece is the projected completion of the 16th Street corridor that should be done in and around Memorial Day, which will create a through fare all the way from Denver Union Station down to Civic Center. I hope that addresses your question. Thank you.
Thank you. I might have a couple questions on the ridership numbers and the service hours, but it sounds like there is an amendment coming. I would agree with Director Busick that there's several things out there that aren't amendments at this point, and maybe we should move forward on those. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Geisinger. Director Catlin, you are next.
Thank you, Chair Guzman. I apologize. I had mentioned that I need to leave early, and I'm pressing right now to meet a deadline to leave. I would prefer to take action on the original motion prior to my departure, if that's possible.
Okay. As promised.
And then any amendments that would be put forth could come before the whole board.
I oppose that. I think this is the committee where we're supposed to make recommendations. I was told repeatedly by board members of this committee, this is where we're supposed to make amendments to these things. This is where we're supposed to get the work done. And so I think if we're going to take that position, we should get the work done in committee. I respect you, Director Catlin. But if you,
I'm
this is
sorry.
where we're supposed to get the work done.
We are 15 minutes out from the end of the meeting, and I don't know if we have time to address all of these amendments, but I will yield to the chair. I apologize. I let him know in advance that I needed to leave early, and I'm running up against that deadline.
Thank you. All right. Yes.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm not a member of this body, and it would be inappropriate for me to call a point of order. May I be recognized as a point of personal privilege?
Yes, as a director, you are recognized. Proceed.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to note, and I know it's hard for us to get into the speed of Robert's rules, but one does wait for the chair to be called on before they proceed or interrupt another member. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Director Nicholson, I did promise we would come back. Are you certain you want to make this motion? There is going to be another opportunity to do some more work before this goes before the entire board. It may be wise so we can collaborate together and make sure everybody has the information before the board takes action on this. I would also like to remind you, I received a quick message from the chair that perfection is the enemy of good, and we cannot let that happen right now. We are on a tight deadline. So if you are willing to wait, I am promising you, I will make a commitment to you in committee that I will work with you to circulate the information properly to all board members so that we can have things done in proper order. Any amendments, by the way, that anybody has considered should properly be sent to General Counsel so that they may be shared with the entire board and Deborah Johnson, and the language can be reviewed, understood before it comes to the board, because we don't want surprises, and that is not how the board is to operate. So please make a decision at this moment.
Let me ask a question then, because I think that it behooves us to present to the public the amendments that are going to be considered in the board packet, essentially, as amendments in the board packet so that people can see them and, hey, what's this? What's going to go on? What is the process by which those amendments could be added to the board packet for consideration on the additional? So we would have on the agenda, the original item and then amendment.
Okay.
How do we do that?
Mr. Kroll, I'm going to turn to you now, and I'm going to request, is it possible for us to collect all of the amendment suggestions or goal suggestions so that we can add an appendix to this committee's work and recommendation going forward so that everybody will have the opportunity to read through those and understand them?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Hold on. I asked a question.
Yeah, so Committee Chair Guzman, typically what's been the case when directors have wished to amend an action item coming forward, they'll distribute that proposed amendment to the board office, and we would email those out. I recognize Director Nicholson's concern, Secretary Nicholson's concern that those be included in the packet. I don't have any objection to that other than there needs to be a deadline set by you, Committee Chair Guzman. I would recommend no later than the end of the day on Thursday, January 23rd. We publish the packet on Friday typically. The executive committee meeting will do its work earlier that day. And so we would want to make sure that those proposed amendments, as they will be presented, are included in the packet at that time.
Okay. I'm going to look to my vice chair for just a moment. I apologize. Vice Chair Gutschenritter, end of day Wednesday, the 22nd.
No, you said 23rd.
I am saying Wednesday, the 22nd. I have to choose the deadline so that there is sufficient time to ensure that there are no spelling errors or any other issues so that we can hand that to the board office and allow them to publish it so we don't look foolish. Mr. Kroll, who would be the expected recipient of such communication? Is it myself? Is it General Counsel Schneider? Is it the board office general email? Who is the appropriate person in this situation to receive that information?
I think it would be best to communicate with myself, with GM CEO Johnson, since this would be her performance that would be, her goals that would be impacted. And it's always good to include your general counsel in matters such as this. The one thing that I would ask members of this committee, this is I don't want to say necessarily unprecedented. There has to be a mechanism by which the board can propose these things, review them, consider them, and then make decisions. But let us not have this be open season. I would ask that serious amendments be forwarded and not necessarily those that are simply curiosities of board members. I leave that to you all to determine what amendments may have merit to rise to this level, but understanding that it will take the board time to work through amendments during the open meeting on Tuesday, January. I'm not going to get the date exactly right. I believe it's the 28th, actually. You're not going to be able to effectively move through 40 amendments. You're not going to be able to effectively move through even 10. The smaller the number, the more focused, the more likely that those will be able to be digested, considered appropriately by your colleagues, and acted upon by the board. So to recap, I would recommend sending any amendments that have serious merit to the board office. That would be myself, the GM CEO, and your general counsel, Melanie Snyder.
And myself. One director.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So tomorrow, end of business, serious considerations in writing to those 4 people, please. Director Nicholson, I'll return to you.
Thank you. One last thing, so with that deadline, I would ask, as a member of the executive committee, that we include those amendments in the executive committee. That they be forwarded to the executive committee in case we want to specifically agendize any of those amendments as amendments to the main motion, so that instead of them just being in the packet.
That would be improper until a motion is made on the main subject, and the executive committee does not handle performance issues. That is the purview of this committee or the full board as the final entity to receive that conversation and do that work.
I apologize. I was under the impression that as the folks who were setting the agenda, we could amend the agenda, but that's a technical matter. I just like the idea of being able to list on the agenda what the amendments were that were going to be considered, because like you said, if we get 40 of them, it would be helpful for the executive committee to say these are the 5 or something that we're going to deal with first, and if anyone else wants to propose them. But it's really technical. It's not actually.
The chair would have purview over that. Okay.
Yeah.
So are we
I
good
will
for right now?
If we're comfortable with it, or I can defer to Director Catlin if she's still on.
She has left the meeting.
All right. In that case, I'll make a motion to accept. Sorry, to what's the right word? Accept the recommended action, to pass the recommended action.
We have a motion and a second already, so it would be proper to call the question.
Sorry. Oh, yes, you're right. Sorry, my apologies. Then I'll pull Director Busick and call the question.
All right.
Mr. Kroll? If there's no further discussion on the item, it might be procedurally unnecessary to call the question.
Oh, well, there you go.
Okay. All right. Are there any no votes on this recommended action?
What is the action?
Sorry, I gotta scroll back up. Give me one moment. We've talked a lot.
Chair?
Yes.
It's the recommended action in the packet for today's meeting.
Yes, sorry, I was looking for your specific words. The recommended action pursuant to the board CEO framework adopted in January 2024 in alignment with the board's employment agreement with the GM CEO, the proposed short-term SMART goals for the period of January 28, 2025 through October 15, 2025 is on the table for action. We're accepting the recommended action as presented on the agenda at this point. Are there any no votes?
No votes as to whether or not we want to pass forward these recommended actions?
If we are going to send the recommended action to the executive committee so it may be agendized properly for the full board meeting in order to meet the deadline of goals that must be established, the framework with a change to the Likert scale 0 to 4 on the questions, and we recognize the changes to the salary adjustment percentages and the ratios of points to those percentages. It's not just goals, it's all of this together, one package. Director Nicholson.
Point of clarification. With the change to the Likert scale, does that need to be a motion in and of itself?
No, that's a technical matter just for the review process. I'm sending it as a recommendation to the executive committee to agendize as part of this. But if we don't add all of this complex together, all of this holistically together, we run out of time to do any of it.
Got it. Okay.
I will call again. Are there any no votes on the motion on the table before us? On the motion before us, sorry. Are you raising your hand as a no, Director Nicholson?
No, sorry, my apologies.
All right, seeing no votes with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members of the committee present. This passes with 6 yes votes, 1 absent, and it moves to the executive committee to be agendized for the full board. Thank you for your participation. I know that this is a stretch in learning, so I appreciate it. And thank you for keeping the meeting tight. The next item we have is a recommended action, or excuse me, a discussion item. I apologize, I'm lost in between 2 screens. Good thing I did my homework and tried to remember all of this. A discussion item about our work plan. 2 quick comments. 1, it is a living document. This is not the final draft. This is nowhere near the final draft, but it's close and it's got the structure of the work that we need to get done this year, including some key meetings between this committee and the general manager CEO for performance review as indicated during the presentation. To that end, I know forms were sent out. Please fill them out properly so that we can have a conversation about it. Mr. Kroll, I will defer to you to present this.
I will share some very quick remarks on this item, and then obviously I think it would be appropriate to see if GM CEO Johnson had anything further to add. You all have sat through explanations of how the work plan came to be in its current form at your previous committee meetings and the steps you all will take to get these over the finish line. So I won't rehash those in their entirety. But suffice to say that the form that we discussed last week at the Operations, Safety, and Security Committee meeting, as well as the Finance and Planning Committee meeting, has been distributed to you all. Please avail yourselves of the opportunities to submit forms with your objectives for the coming year. We ask that those forms be submitted back to the board office no later than the end of business on Monday, January 27th. That way we can compile all of those and put them forward for your consideration at the retreat on that coming Saturday, February 1st. This committee will next meet again on February 3rd. So there's going to be a tight turnaround to get this document updated. So my recommendation is that this committee wait until March to approve its work plan to allow yourselves greater time to add to it. One thing that I do want to highlight on this is the quarterly GM and CEO performance discussions to occur in executive session. Those were added pursuant to the 8th Amendment to the Employment Agreement. And so those dates are listed here. And I would recommend that all board members, not just performance committee members, circle those dates in their calendars so that you may participate in that conversation. And then one thing to keep to get your interest flowing, the board briefing materials that you all receive on a monthly basis are set to be discussed at next month's meeting. So that's just about 12 or so, 13 or so days from now. So please take a look at the board briefing documents. They're online on the website, and consider what you might like to add, what you might like to see move out of that document, and also keep in mind and perhaps have a broader discussion in your back pocket as to whether those documents need to be continued to be published in their current form, given the strong evolution and continuing investment that is being made in the performance dashboard for the agency. And with that, I have nothing further to add on the work plan at this time.
In reference to time, I would appreciate if you have any questions to reach out to me directly, either by email or by phone call as members of the committee, so we can continue the work on the work plan. I think all ideas will be received. We'll figure out what is the priority and what we need to do and what we would like to do, and we will rank them accordingly and try and organize a plan that will get the work done this year and get the right work done this year. It's also my commitment that, GM CEO Johnson knows this, that we will work together to make sure that we are balancing our workloads so that there is not too much on any part of the year. The heaviest work that this committee does is at the end of the year. Are there any other matters to discuss? Director Rusha?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a notation of the previously referenced point scale. However, I recognize that we are at or beyond time, so I will yield to you and just recognize we can follow up via email.
Yeah, I think that would be best, and we can send that out with to all members. That way they
Okay.
understand what we're talking about. Okay,
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
thank you. All right, the next performance committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 3rd. I'm sorry, Vice Chair Guccian-Ritter.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to see if it's appropriate to, in an effort to limit the amount of amendments related to short-term goals, is it appropriate to say if it was not discussed today on the call, it won't be accepted as a proposed amendment submitted to.
Unfortunately, that would be an inappropriate way to proceed. I think we can consider everything at the board meeting that comes up, but if we have a way to structure this in an organized manner, it might be helpful to have that information, which is why I said the deadline is tomorrow. End of business means 5 p.m. in my head, in writing, the amendments to be sent to the 4 people that were mentioned: General Counsel Snyder, the board office, Jack Kroll, myself as the committee chair, and Deborah Johnson as general manager CEO, will help us ensure that everybody has opportunity to understand and digest what the amendments might look like before they go to the full board. Then they can be shared out properly to everybody on the whole board, all 15 members. And then it would be the board's determination as a body whether they would accept any further at that time. I do understand what you're trying to do, which is to make this a process that is efficient, but unfortunately that would violate the rules of procedure.
Thank you.
Director Nicholson?
Yep. Just to Director Kroll, I would ask that those amendments be included in the appendix, or however you wanted to put it, in the board packet for Thursday, so that we can take a look at them if we want with the executive committee. Thanks.
It is Executive Board Office Manager Kroll.
Sorry.
I am a director and you are a director, but we are elected to those positions, to be clear. All right. Are there any other matters? Seeing none, I will announce again, the next meeting is scheduled Monday, February 3rd. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have the movement. Thank you so much. Thank you for a good meeting. Have a good afternoon. General Manager CEO Johnson, we will follow up, okay? Thank you.